The protagonist of this story was very happy when he was a child, but he had a curse. After losing his mother because of this curse, he ended up becoming reclusive. He was lonely and had no friends at school, and this curse he had was the worst of all. He could see when someone was going to die, and the worst part was that he felt it as if he could see it on the skin of the very people who were close to losing their lives. And if that wasn't bad enough, he could see the death of people close to him. Because of that, he avoided making friends, but everything gets worse when the new student arrives in his class, and that girl ends up becoming his biggest nightmare. This story is really good, guys, so don't forget to leave a like and a comment to support the channel. Without further delay, let's get to the video. Unfortunately, death is already part of human coexistence. No matter how much we like living, in the end everything ends the same way. Medicine can't solve this kind of problem. And what our protagonist was saying is that death was inevitable. It was impossible to escape from it. Sometimes people lose their lives in accidents, or their lives are taken by criminals, and that was the worst way to be eliminated. And as incredible as it may seem, that was very common. Dying that way caused a lot of anger to family members. That's because they would start to hate the person who killed their relative. And many times the criminal ended up escaping unpunished. But why was our protagonist saying these things? He wakes up very early, and the alarm was ringing at 6:45 in the morning. If you usually wake up earlier than him, leave a comment here for us. He was even struggling to turn off the alarm. After stretching, he opens the curtains, and while changing clothes, he remembers that he didn't have any dreams that night. That meant his day was going to go really well. After preparing breakfast, he turns on the television. It was talking about a criminal who was walking naked on the streets. Only in Japan do these bizarre things happen. The guy had been arrested. Fortunately, nobody suffered any physical harm. Next, the TV showed the horoscope. The boy comments that those things don't exist, but they still keep talking about people's luck and misfortune. The name of our protagonist is Rintaro, and after turning off the television, he comments that a transfer student will arrive at school today. Yesterday's class was very lively, so today would also be very good. When putting on his sneakers, he turns to a picture frame, and we see it was a photo of his mother, and he says goodbye to her. He needs to run so he won't be late, and notices that the janitor was very friendly, saying good morning to the students, and even starting small talk with our hero. But he doesn't talk much with people, even though he thought that old man was nice. That's why he didn't want to get involved with him. We will soon see why he doesn't get involved with people. Inside the classroom, he kept listening to his friends talking. That shameless boy was interested in the new student, because he found out she was cute, and the other guy kept shouting with joy. They ask Rintaro if he also thinks the new student will be pretty. However, he ignores them and leaves his friends talking alone, but something catches his attention. Each day that passed, he was becoming more and more lonely, and while everyone was talking, he goes alone to his desk. That bothered the boy, and while looking at the window, he thinks it's better to act this way anyway. By sitting at the last desk, he could avoid contact as much as possible. He did this so that he wouldn't make friends with his classmates. The poor boy carried a very heavy burden, and also held himself back from sleeping in class because he was afraid of having dreams. At that moment, the teacher opens the door and welcomes everyone. The new student, who would be transferred, was waiting outside and noticed that the teacher was calling her to introduce herself. The girl walked in with a big smile on her face, and all the students were amazed, saying she was very cute. She immediately set her eyes on Rintaro. Meanwhile, he kept ignoring her. Nice to meet you, my name is Yumino. The teacher wanted to make the introduction, but thanked her for doing it herself. It seemed she had become interested in Rintaro, since she couldn't stop looking at him. The classmates near the boy commented that she was very pretty, and he was even holding back from looking at her. But it seemed inevitable, and he ended up looking. The teacher asks if she would like to say a little about herself, and making gestures with her hand, she said she really likes living. Our hero pretends he wasn't listening to anything, and his greatest wish was to create a world where all people could live happily. The teacher makes a little joke saying that this goal was very difficult, and leaves Yumeno embarrassed. With that, the students start gossiping, saying that they are already in love, and since Rintaro doesn't like making friends, he was quiet in his corner. The teacher told the girl to sit in the back, where there was an empty desk. Then Yumeno goes straight in Rintaro's direction, and smiling with blushed cheeks, she tries to greet him. After sitting down, the girls go there and keep asking which province she was from. At that moment, our hero felt uncomfortable and ended up standing up. Then Yumeno told her classmates that she needed to do something important, so she goes to Rintaro, preventing him from leaving the classroom. And smiling, she asks if he was Rintaro. The boy already starts sweating cold, and extending her hands, she introduces herself by saying her full name. In a very rude way, our protagonist said that he had already heard her name seconds ago and didn't need her to repeat it. Since Yumeno was very friendly, she asked the boy's full name. He didn't want to answer and ended up creating an awkward atmosphere because everyone was watching that scene. After saying his name, which was Sahotome Hintaro, she was very happy and immediately reached out her hand to greet him. The girl had seen him leave home, which meant they were neighbors. And upon hearing that, he already started trembling nervously and even clenched his fists. And in a very rude way, he said he didn't want to shake her hand, and ends up leaving, thinking about that rude, crazy guy. Poor Yumeno stays there not understanding anything. I know you already feel like kicking him, but take it easy guys. He has a reason. The poor girl just watches him walking away. At that moment someone touches the girl's shoulder and tells her not to worry about Rintaro, because he was like that. He was a little melancholic and scary, besides no one ever knew what he was thinking. On the other hand, he didn't want to get involved with anyone and much less have friends. That's because our hero's power was to see people's deaths, especially those who were close to him. It seemed that the closer he got to someone, the faster that person lost their life. At that moment, he realized he was dreaming again. He was in the body of another person walking on the street. This person was going home after work and the late night traffic was total chaos. And at that moment, the man ignored the traffic light and crossed the street. And because of that, he ended up suffering an accident. And to make matters worse, the person still had a wife and a daughter. Rintaro was seeing everything as if he were the victim. And that was the traumatic vision he always had whenever he slept. In bed, he kept tossing and turning. Whenever he fell asleep, he ended up having those visions. On the news, they reported an accident that had happened that dawn. Rintaro realized it was exactly the man he had seen in his premonitions. Those visions of his never failed. He had two types of visions, which were the premonition, that happened between 1 and 2 days, and also the vision of seeing someone who was dying very close. Those were the worst, because he saw the person dying in real time, live. The boy was very shaken by this, since he had not gotten used to it. Before going to school, he says goodbye to his mother again, and says he will return later. That guys already makes us understand that he was an orphan, and lived alone. He started having these visions when he was very young. His mother tried to comfort him, because he always cried. Back in the classroom, he ends up meeting Yumeno again. She was all cheerful saying good morning, but he never replied. Then the girl starts bothering him, asking if by any chance he was listening to what she was saying. What is it, girl? What do you want to know? She was only saying good morning, and he stays there sweating cold, trying to avoid making friends with her. The transfer student was called Yumeno Sakurako, and was still trying to get closer to him. On the first day he had completely ignored her, but after that she started following him after class, since they lived in the same neighborhood, and in the following days she kept chasing him wherever he went. 8 days had already passed, and she wouldn't leave our hero alone, trying to start a conversation. Then Yumeno keeps asking if by any chance he likes horoscopes, but he barely knew what his sign was, and she keeps talking about the news. My god, this is so annoying. Won't she ever leave me alone? Looking at the window, she said the view was very beautiful and kept asking him to look too. Why hasn't she given up talking to me yet? She's very strange. With his head down, Rintaro asks her to leave him alone. And a little sad, she asks if by any chance it isn't fun to talk to her. No, it's not fun at all to talk to you. Calm down, Rintar. You don't need to be so aggressive. I don't know why you insist so much. Even with me ignoring you, you keep starting conversations. The atmosphere gets even more tense, because the class representative shows up, since she had heard everything. She said that Rintaro shouldn't be mocking Yumeno. The boy defends himself, saying that she is the one who keeps bothering him. The poor girl was embarrassed and said she only wanted to get closer to the boy. The representative's name was Shizuka, and she said she noticed that he was responding rudely. For being scolded, Yumeno felt bad and apologized. The girl then asks them to hand in their homework, but the transfer girl hadn't done her assignments. The representative starts scolding her too. In fact, Shizuka was an old friend of our protagonist and was the only girl who knew his past. That's why she had taken care of him. Even if she didn't bother him from afar, the girl took care of her childhood friend and had never abandoned him. Later, everyone was paying attention to the class. Then the girl, she keeps whispering to Rintaran, asking about the lesson. He answers that she should ask the teacher, not him. At that moment, the teacher notices they were talking and asks the two of them to be quiet. At break time, she runs up to him, asking to have lunch together, but he didn't want to. Even so, the girl keeps insisting, following Rintaran down the stairs. That ends up making him very irritated. Even if he ignored and answered coldly, she didn't stop trying to get closer. The real fear of our hero was making friends with her and ending up seeing the girl's death through his dreams. After all, it seemed that the boy attracted these disasters, guys. Everyone around him ended up getting hurt. She said she would share her lunch with him and got all happy. At that moment, he shouted at her to get lost and that he didn't want her company. It seemed he had never been so rude before, and that scared the girl. She even called him again, but the boy turned around and left. No matter what I do, this girl won't leave me alone. On the school rooftop, he mentions that all he wants is for the girl to stop being kind. He goes to the railing, and once there, he starts observing the landscape. All people had somewhere to go back to after school, but he had no one waiting for him. That's because his mother had died some time ago and he lived alone in that house. But it hadn't always been like that, because he had a mother who cared a lot about him. At that moment, Yumeno seems to scare our hero. She yells at him not to jump and grabs his arm. The boy didn't like physical contact much, so he tries to break free from the girl. She keeps repeating that he couldn't die and even ends up falling on the ground with her on top of him. Our protagonist wasn't understanding anything anymore. And of course, there had to be that romance scene. Since he was on the rooftop after class, she imagined he was going to give up on life, if you know what I mean. Closing his eyes, he told her to calm down. Then the boy said that the representative had told everything about Rintaro's mother. Then the scene goes back a few minutes earlier. At the time, he had run away from the girl going up the stairs. She had been very sad, but ended up meeting the class representative. The girl asked why Yumino had that sad face, and the poor girl started crying. After explaining everything, the representative said that Rintaro was really like that, but the poor girl thought he was angry because of her fault. Shizuka offers a handkerchief and tells her not to think badly of Rintaro. He had always been alone, and then Yumino wanted to know why. It was a bit complicated to explain this story, but it had to do with his mother. Shizuka didn't feel very comfortable telling this kind of story to the girl, but she needed to know all that, so she was going to tell her. In elementary school, Rintaro and Shizuka were very good friends back then. The boy was very lively and also cheerful, and even was the center of attention. He was the popular boy in the class. But after his mother died in an accident, he became a recluse and even stopped having friendships. Everyone in the class was worried about him, but the boy didn't approach anyone. The girl says that she always watched him from afar, and little by little ended up stopping having contact. The teacher said it was trauma because he had lost his mother. It seemed like he was afraid of something. Since then, Rintaro didn't want to get close to anyone anymore. And it had been a long time since Shizuka had seen him smile. Yumeno listened carefully to the whole story. And finally, the representative told Yumeno not to give up on continuing to talk to him. Because she couldn't do anything, she didn't have the strength. It was a request that the representative was making to the new girl. Please, Yumeno, keep talking to Rintaro. Only then will you be able to save him. The girl was determined to do that and even said she could leave it to her. And she already runs off in search of our hero. For some time, Shizuka had been watching our protagonist from afar, but she didn't have the strength to go talk to him, and now she thanks the new girl in her thoughts, because she really was a girl of attitude. That way we return to the present. When the redhead was on top of Rintaro, she apologizes for invading his privacy, and asks that the representative had told his story. The intention wasn't to pry, and she also said she was sorry that he had lost his mother. And even though his mother had lost her life, it wasn't for him to do something crazy like jumping off the building. The guy said he wasn't going to do anything like that, and the girl was confused. He really missed his mother, but he wouldn't have the courage to take his own life. The most important person to him had gone away and he couldn't do anything about it. He would never see her again. And even if he didn't have the courage, sometimes he had these negative thoughts, letting out a scream. And Yumeno said he shouldn't think like that. And the guy gets angry asking if she knows what it's like to have that feeling of not having a mother. Again, the girl yells saying that he couldn't die, because in the future he would meet someone who truly cared about him. Besides, there were many fun things he could do, and if he gave up, he wouldn't enjoy them. She was very worried and said she would teach him that there are many good things in life. Yeah, I don't know about you, but that sounded like a pickup line to me. All he had to do was give her a chance and she would save him. Yeah, guys, that was definitely a pickup line, and I don't know about you, but I even got a speck in my eye. But the boy was angry, especially now that they had touched and the girl was sitting on his lap. However, she starts crying. That makes him a little worried. They had only known each other for a week, and he couldn't understand why she was so worried about him. This is called love, my dear. Just because they sat next to each other didn't mean they were friends. Besides, he treated the girl very badly during that time, and about 20 minutes ago he yelled at her on the stairs. But now the girl was all worried and crying, and even comments that she looks like a kitten and starts to laugh. This was the first time in a long while that he found something funny. This catches Yumeno's attention and she is surprised. He ends up revealing to her that it had been a long time since he had a good laugh. This ends up leaving the poor girl confused. Then he lets a tear fall and apologizes to Yumeno. While still on the boy's lap, he keeps saying that he wasn't making fun of her, and he wasn't trying to die. He just liked to go up the building to look at the scenery. And now that everything was cleared up, he asks Yumeno to get off him. Hearing these words, the girl gets embarrassed. And little by little, she realizes that she really was on top of the guy, and even lets out a scream and right after jumps back apologizing. The poor thing turned redder than a tomato and trembled all over, asking for forgiveness. Now our hero had understood why he was avoiding her as much as possible. In a mysterious way, he feels that they were very similar. She wanted everyone to get along, just like her mother. Her smile was magnificent, and whenever he remembered her, it was with that cheerful look. That's why he thanks Yumeno and even gets a little embarrassed. She said that whenever he needs, she will be there to help him. Just wait, a twist is coming soon, since this boy's curse makes those close to him lose their lives, so keep watching. Later, he goes back to the classroom. Shizuka notices that the boy was fine, and even though she didn't show it, the class rep cared a lot about him. With her head down, she apologizes for having spoken about Rintaro's mother to the new girl, but that wasn't a problem, he keeps saying. And he even thanks her for always taking care of our hero. The guy gives a charming smile thanking Shizuka, and she gets all emotional. She even remembers when they were kids. One day she got hurt, and the big guy went there to rescue her. When he realized the wound wasn't serious, he started laughing, saying he was very worried about her. And back to the present, she was crying, apologizing for not having managed to do anything all this time. Outside, Yumeno was listening to the conversation. She realized Rintor was fine, so she runs off all happy for having helped him. Even though Shizuka had stayed distant, she never abandoned the boy and he knew she was always around to help him. Leaving together with Yumeno, they go on talking. She said it was embarrassing to have fallen on top of him, and the guy said he felt guilty for having mistreated the girl on the stairs, but in the end he was glad, because he got to talk with Shizuka again. He avoided getting involved with people as much as possible, because he was afraid of seeing their deaths. He reached a point where they wouldn't go together any further. When saying goodbye, he thanks her for not giving up on him during that week. And the sweet Yumeno kept hopping all happy. Then she reveals that something also happened with her mother. She had disappeared when she was in elementary school. The guy feels bad because he had said she didn't know how he felt. In fact, my mother didn't die. When I woke up, she had simply disappeared. Since then, she has been looking for her mother, and even comments that she loved her smile on her face. That's why she kept smiling. She believes that if she stays like this, someday she will find her. Our hero asks if she lives alone, and the girl confirms. I have never seen another country besides Japan where orphan children live alone like this. Isn't there an orphanage here? No. What there are the most are characters without parents. She also went through trauma when she was a child, but even so she kept smiling without abandoning her joy. Before saying goodbye, he said that they were the same. It was as if they were birds of the same feather. She laughs saying yes, she agrees and jokes saying they are two peas in a pod and that's why they would get along. He finally decides to hold her hand and they greet each other. Arriving home, he decides that he will start making friends again, because that would be good, and his mother would wish that. He ends up closing the curtain to sleep, and in the middle of the night he has a nightmare of premonition. He didn't know if this power was because he was one of the chosen ones. No, this was more like a curse. This ability to see another person's death is terrible. He not only sees death but feels it on his skin. It was as if he had already lost his life countless times. And that's why he imagines that if he doesn't befriend anyone, none of the people around him will lose their lives. Whenever he had these visions, they came true. He sees someone returning to his school and goes to the classroom where he used to study. Then she walks slowly when she hears the caretaker's voice asking why she was there at school. We realize that it was Shizuka, the class representative. She had forgotten something and returned to school to get it. The caretaker gives her a wicked laugh and even keeps saying it is very dangerous to walk the streets at that hour of the night. The girl trembles, finding this very suspicious, and said she would just grab the object and run back home. However, the man had a knife and ends up hurting her. Being sarcastic, he said that the girl could get hurt, and now that she was lifeless, he would take care of her. The girl falls to her knees on the floor, and all of this scene our protagonist was seeing in first person and could clearly see the face of that jerk. The criminal said again that he would take very good care of her body. You can already imagine what this guy means by that, right? Shizuka would have her life taken by the school janitor, and the next morning when he wakes up, he mentions that this was the worst nightmare he ever had. This could only be a lie. His best friend would have her life taken that night. He even wonders if it was because he reconnected with her, or if it was already destined to happen. But what he could not allow was for this premonition to come true. The next day he goes very early to school. That's because he was not able to rest at home. When he arrives there, he starts thinking of some strategies to save Shizuka, but ends up hearing the girl calling his name. And when he turns around, it was exactly her, Shizuka. She was in the classroom giving him a good morning with a smile on her face. That was too traumatic and he couldn't even answer properly. She asks if he was okay and the boy keeps stuttering, saying a weak good morning. And noticing that he was fine, she smiles again. At that moment, her friend arrives and starts talking. According to his premonitions, the deaths happened about 1 or 2 days later. And poor Shizuka, guys, she didn't know anything. Looking at his own hands, he thinks about what he could do. Even if he tried, he couldn't change destiny, since she was destined anyway to lose her life. Even though it was dark in that dream, he could clearly see the janitor's face. No one imagined that this guy would be capable of doing those things, especially because he was very kind. They do say you can't judge someone by appearances. That is true. Bad people usually hid, blending into the crowd. And one thing was certain, all of Rintaro's dreams came true. In the classroom, he thinks that maybe he won't be able to save his friend. That's because other people close to him ended up dying, even when he tried to save them. That happened with his own mother, since he saw her death one day before. No matter how much he tried, he couldn't change her fate. And in that moment he realized he didn't have a superpower, but rather a super curse. And there was little Rintaro before his mother, who had just suffered the accident. At that moment, he ends up getting startled, and then Oyumeno was there giving him good morning. She asks if he was okay. That's because he looked sick, and since his face showed worry, she kept asking what was going on. He knew she cared a lot about his well-being, but he couldn't tell the truth, so he just made up some excuse. We know she wouldn't abandon him anyway, right guys? She even kept saying that if he was going through any problem, he should tell her, since they were friends. If by any chance he said out loud that he knew, everyone would be scared, but that would make things much easier. Of course he wasn't going to say anything, and only made an excuse, saying that he was sleepy. He apologized for worrying her, and the girl said there was no problem, It didn't seem like she was nosy, but rather a girl very concerned about her friends. But he couldn't help showing that he wasn't feeling well. He just didn't tell others about the visions, because that already went wrong in the past. When the visions started, he told his little friends, but they thought it was strange and didn't believe him, until people started dying the same way he said. And with that, people began calling him the Reaper. Wherever he went, people gossiped until he started being excluded from games, and little by little drifted away from friends until there was no one left, and his mother decided to move to another city because of that. Now, in the present, he knew he couldn't go around talking about his visions to people. He would have to keep all of this to himself. The teacher was explaining physics questions, and the one who raised her hand was precisely the smartest girl in class, Shizuka, and she starts answering the questions. Hitting his hand on the desk, he knew she would be eliminated that night inside the school, and the one who would do it was the disgusting janitor. Those scenes were engraved in the mind of our protagonist, and then seeing him there, she gets worried. When the class ends, the two go to him to ask what had happened. The boy realized he was lost in his thoughts, and they comment that he looked pale and was even trembling. On top of that, he was soaked in sweat. Shizuka said he should go home if he wasn't feeling well, and they even told the teacher that he was sick. At that moment, he hits the desk saying he can't go home and leave her alone. Of course, this scares the girl, asking what had happened, and even the classmates start commenting, saying Rintaro was weird today. The guy apologizes, saying it was nothing, but of course the girl knew something was wrong. No matter how much he tried to change the premonitions, it never worked. So he goes to the infirmary. After measuring his temperature, they saw he didn't have a fever. He gets up saying he's going back to class, and when leaving the infirmary, he meets Yumeno. The boy thinks it's strange that she was still outside waiting for him. Actually, she had gone to get some snacks. She imagined that maybe he was hungry, since he didn't eat properly during the break. This girl here is really cute, but our hero keeps being rude to her. That makes her embarrassed, saying that maybe she overdid it by bringing too many snacks, and he kept watching her, showing everything she bought. The girl hands him a yogurt, asking if he would like to drink it. At that moment, she dropped the bread on the floor, and a bit clumsy, the girl said she wasn't good at these things, and he starts laughing. And leaving Yumeno surprised, he accepts the invitation and said it would be a pleasure to snack with her. After 2 weeks trying, she finally managed to have lunch with our hero. It was time to leave, and the students were leaving the school. Shizuka sees her phone, and our hero calls out to her. The boy wanted to know if she was already going home and notices that she had the school work in her backpack. Actually, she still had to finish organizing some things and asks if something happened. He remembers she had forgotten some object, that's why she came back to school at night, so he couldn't let her go back. Grabbing her shoulders, he gets desperate, asking if she forgot something. Of course, she doesn't understand anything. Your phone, your subway card, your math book, or even your handkerchief, did you forget them? Are you sure you didn't forget anything? Shizuka answers that she thinks not. For a moment, he even thinks he is going crazy, but then he tells her very seriously that if by chance she returned to school at night, she should call him to let him know, and after insisting a lot, she agrees to do that. The girl logically thought this was very weird, and Rintaro stays there watching the girl leave. After entering the science room, she starts cleaning everything. Later, she is happy for finishing organizing. It had taken longer than she expected, and now she was going home. When she lifts her backpack, the card gets stuck in the chair, and when she leaves the room, the card falls on the floor. It had been the subway card she forgot in the room. The girl keeps remembering Rintaro, telling her to let him know in case she needed to return to school. It was very strange for him to act like that, and the girl even thought that maybe he liked her. Besides, he kept offering to carry her backpack, and she gets all happy, imagining that maybe they could date in the future. All happy, she goes singing to the subway station. Arriving there, Shizuka noticed that the card wasn't in her backpack. That was strange because she had used it earlier, so it must have been left in the classroom. Already at Rintaro's house, he was wondering why his friend wasn't answering. I don't know why he don't get out of bed and go there to help the girl, but he keeps sending messages asking if she had already left school and that when she finished she should let him know. Since she wasn't answering, he decides to call the girl, and after ringing a few times it goes to voicemail. Shizuka wasn't seeing her phone and her concern was trying to find the subway card. At that moment, someone bumps into her, dropping her bag. They both apologize and we see that her phone was ringing, but she ended up not hearing the call. He was already getting mad because he called countless times and even imagines that the worst might have happened. So he decides to go there to check. While going back to school, she remembers that Rintaro asked her to call him, but he seemed kind of sick, and if by chance she called and he was sleeping, that would be annoying. Because of that, she decides not to call and decided to go back to school. Even so, arriving there, she walks through the dark hallways and right after the janitor appears behind her. Just looking at this guy's face already makes you want to kick him hard. And look at this sly little smile of his. The poor girl was alone in the school with him, and at that moment she feels a shiver. It was precisely that despicable being behind her. And as the girl walked, he kept taking steps behind her. The girl goes to the science room corridor, and when she touches the door, he appears behind saying goodnight. Shizuka quickly turns around, and it was at that moment the girl ended up being eliminated. That day was marked in the school's history. The next day there was no class and the news started to spread. Then Yumeno, she dropped her phone on the floor. She couldn't believe what had happened. He was in the teacher's room and was completely paralyzed. Even the teachers, outraged, asked how this could have happened. The principal said that the police were already investigating and our hero was there all downcast. At that time I got a little angry at him. Think of a cowardly kid. He stands up really fast and the teacher asks if he had any adult he could trust. In a serious way, he said he didn't have any. Then he goes to the hallway locker, and when he goes to get his shoe, the janitor ends up appearing. That was the man who had eliminated his best friend. And this trash's voice was familiar, and while he said that classes were cancelled, the boy quickly turns around and realizes that the guy was completely fake, saying that the criminal was around the school. He punches the locker and starts remembering all the moments he had together with Shizuka. She was a true friend, and was always smiling. What he most wanted now was to fly at this idiot's neck. And with an evil face, he keeps asking if by chance that girl was his friend. You better go home soon, boy, because the culprit hasn't been caught yet. He starts shouting, saying he was going to end that bastard's life. But at that moment, Yumeno appears, opening the door. He gets really startled because he was interrupted, and the girl, she keeps pretending, saying they should leave. Even the teacher over in the other hallway keeps saying that they should leave, since they were disturbing the crime scene. With that, she holds Rintaro's hand and tells him to leave quickly, and she is already dragging our protagonist outside. The janitor, he seems to have realized that the boy knew he was the killer. Right after that, it starts raining and they wait outside. The girl asks if Rintaro heard the news and he said yes. It was kind of hard to talk about a friend who lost her life. Last night he went to the school and when he got there she had already died. The janitor was no longer at the crime scene, and with a lot of anger our hero keeps blaming himself, since he could have done more, but it was useless because she was already destined for that. And even if he couldn't save her, he was angry at himself. The rain wouldn't stop, and then Yumeno said she would have to leave. Even so, opening her umbrella, she asks if he would like to walk together with her. But our big guy, he doesn't answer anything. She knew they were friends, and that's why he was suffering so much. The guy apologizes and tells her to leave alone, since he was going to stay. The girl agrees and says goodbye, telling him not to take too long because it was dangerous. The big guy said it was all right, and tells her to be careful, and ends up saying goodbye watching the girl leave. Our protagonist starts thinking that this is all his fault, since he had become friends with Shizuka again, and right after that he leaves through another path. It had already stopped raining, and he walked so much through the streets that he ended up getting lost. He ended up on a path that was not his way back home. He recognized it as a park where he used to play with Shizuka. There were no children playing there in that place. Maybe it was because it was already close to night, so he ends up sitting on the swing and thinks about what he could do to break this curse. Just watching was too painful, and the poor guy starts crying, folks. He knew who the killer was and did nothing. Maybe he could have called the police. It's likely people would call him crazy and wouldn't believe him, but at least he would have tried a little harder, right? Still crying, he thinks that maybe none of this would matter, since in the end he never managed to save anyone. Sitting on the swing, he asks who it was that cast this curse on him, since he never wished for it. As he was destined to suffer forever, maybe it would be better to end it all. At that moment he remembers Yumeno above him, saying he could not die. Remembering those words, he starts crying again. Thinking of the girl, he knew that if he left, she would also suffer a lot. It was as if all the effort she made was finally having results. That's why he could not have this kind of negative thought. He should live a happy life, so that his mother and his friend feel happiness for him. Both were very kind to our hero. So the boy, he would have to value his life. At that moment, he has a real-time vision, and notices that the person who was being attacked saw Yumeno's face. That was very strange, and was happening right now live. That's why he gets up and starts running. Maybe he was wrong, but it looked like Yumeno was attacking the janitor. He runs because he recognized the place of that scene. And when he gets there, he is petrified. He couldn't move when he peeked around the corner. He had seen a dirty blade, and who was there was his new friend. Scared, he asks what Yumeno was doing. And we see that the girl was all dirty with red liquid. Giving a sinister laugh, she says, "Good night, Rintaro." The guy, he starts sweating cold, because he knew his ability didn't lie. He had seen what just happened with Shizuka. The scene he had seen was a scene from the present. He had clearly seen that with his power. The girl, she had eliminated the janitor. She hit his neck with her knife, and the girl asks if it wasn't too big a coincidence that he had arrived there, since his house was a few streets up. The boy sweats cold, and she asks if the teacher hadn't warned him. Walking at night in that area was very dangerous. She gives a smile and her cheeks turn red. That voice and way of speaking were clearly Yumeno's, but there was something about her that felt strange. The personality was completely different, and she was in a place that was a crime scene. He clenches his fist and runs past her. He didn't want to believe that was true, so he decides to see with his own eyes, and when he turns the alley, he finds the janitor lifeless. All that vision was true and his power never failed. The janitor really had been attacked by Yumeno, and leaning on the pole, he starts throwing up. "Was it you who did this?" She makes an innocent face and right after says that yes, it was her. "I eliminated him with my own hands and even said I hated that janitor." While she was cleaning the knife, Rintaro asks why she would do something like that. In a calm way, she said that it was logical. That guy had eliminated Shizuka, so she ended up taking revenge. She says this with the greatest naturalness. So much that our hero starts to get scared, thinking she is very dangerous. Only he was supposed to know that information, and he wonders, how did she find that out? Did you go to school last night and end up witnessing the crime scene? She said no, and that if she had been there she would have stopped it. Then how do you know? She gives a smile and said she just knew. She can feel the evil in people. The guy is shocked because that did not make much sense. He even thinks that maybe she had an ability similar to his, but that did not matter. And shouting, he said that she could not do that, because it was wrong. It was better to have reported it to the police and made him be arrested. The girl just listens and he keeps shouting at her. However, that janitor could not complain about anything because he paid with the same coin. The guy committed a crime and went there and suffered, but it was Yumino who would now carry this sin. In response, she is smiling and said that all bad people should simply stop existing. At that moment, he realized she had a few screws loose. She even asks if he thinks prison would be the right price for such a criminal, especially since there are big chances he would not serve the sentence and still live for the rest of his life. Someone who took another's life should pay the same price, the girl keeps saying. In the real world, people commit much worse things and still get documentaries praising what they did. Yumeno said it did not matter if she eliminated 1 or 2 people. There will always be bad people, but just one she eliminates is enough, because if she had done that before, Shizuka would still be alive, and trying to convince our hero, she asks if it would not have been better if that janitor had died earlier. She throws the handkerchief up and says that evil must be eliminated from this world, but the boy thinks that is not right, because now she carries the weight of a crime, and even if they were bad, it was not for her to judge them. However, she insists that guy killed his best friend, and asks if by any chance he would like to forgive him. Our hero shouts saying it was not like that at all. She simply did not have the right to judge someone's life and death. He even puts his hand on his chest because he was feeling sick. According to Rintaro, if she paid with the same coin, she would be becoming someone the same. Then she gives a smile saying that he is very kind, and no matter what he says, she still thinks it is better for bad people to be eliminated. Turning the corner, she said she was already leaving. The boy tries to stop her, and she apologizes for him having seen those things, but he should not worry, because tomorrow she would forget everything. Remember this well, guys, because it will be important. He does not understand anything of what she had said. And then Yumeno said that Rintaro was very kind, and that she hopes he continues being a good person for her from now on. At that moment, Rintaro thinks he must have hit his head, and is going crazy. And going back home, he was there trying to dissolve everything that happened in these last 2 days. It is not possible to find out how she knew that the criminal was the janitor. Most likely she had an ability like his. That girl had Yumeno's face and voice, but the personality was very different. It even seemed like she was possessed by an evil spirit. He keeps saying, it is hard to imagine that that freshman would do something like that, even more imagining that all that sweet smile was a mask behind an evil girl. The next day, he goes to school, because classes had already returned. He is the first student to arrive in the classroom and notices that there were flowers on the class rep's desk. Seeing that, he already feels melancholic. It was strange that the press had not reported the janitor's death, but it was just a matter of time before it was discovered. He even imagines they will connect some dots between Shizuka's death and that janitor. Maybe they can investigate and get to Yumeno. At that moment, he receives a good morning from a familiar voice, and when he turns, it was precisely the little redhead who was behind him. She was trying to understand why he had that strange face. Then she gives a smile with blushing cheeks. The guy did not understand anything because she was acting as if nothing had happened, and the girl asks if he was still sad about what happened to Yuka. She even said that the culprit had not been caught, but that the police were already working on it. Hearing those words, he makes an evil face. That is because she was pretending. She was very cynical, as if she was not the one who killed the janitor. And he even wonders how she can be such a good actress. At that moment, he starts to get angry and grabs Yumeno's shoulders, asking why she had eliminated that man. Scared, the little girl does not understand anything. Of course that man was bad, but you could not have done that. She starts getting even more scared and then screams saying she knows nothing of what he is talking about. It was too much on Rintaro's mind, so he starts saying that he will not let her make a fool of him and asks if she does not remember having killed the janitor. The girl said it was not her, and that she would never do something like that. Grinding his teeth in anger, he shouts at her to stop lying to him, and also said that he witnessed everything last night in the alley, near where they lived. Scared, the girl told him not to talk to her anymore, and the big guy realized he was losing his mind. His heart races and he starts to feel sick. In the hallways, they can hear him yelling at Yumeno, and because of that, several students go there to stop him from talking to her like that. His classmate even says that from the hallway everyone could hear, and another girl asks Yumeno if she was okay, and they still say that he should not blame the new girl for such horrible things. The blonde one did not know the whole story, but there were things that should not be said out loud. More students start arriving there to protect the redhead. The poor girl apologizes, and she says not to judge Rentaro, but our hero simply runs out of the classroom. All of this was too much madness. He runs through the hallways while thinking if he was going crazy and if all of this was just in his head. Then Yumeno really seemed like she didn't know anything, and he keeps remembering the scene from that night in the dark alley. She had said when saying goodbye that the next day she would not remember anything. And stopping in the hallway, he wonders if maybe she has a split personality, or maybe she was just a good actress. In the newspapers it was saying that the school janitor ended up dying in a car accident. He goes towards the teacher's room, and when he gets there he asks for permission. The teacher asks what had happened. He was kind of desperate and wanted to ask her something, and it was about the janitor. And when he says that, everyone turns around. The teacher asked if he knew about the accident, and messing with her hair, said that it really was terrible. He asks if the janitor really died in a car accident. And when she said yes, the guy is already completely in shock. The teacher was very sad, saying that janitor was a kind man and took good care of the students. But Rintaro had seen him being killed by Yumeno. That scene kept coming back to his mind, and it was very clear to him. Holding his hand to his chest, he starts feeling sick again, thinking he was going crazy. The teacher told him to take a deep breath, and when he falls to the floor, she goes over very worried. The kid here, he was having a breakdown, and if I were him, I would also be thinking I was going crazy. At that moment, the teacher hugs him, saying that everyone is suffering along with our hero, but that the boy should stay calm because everything would pass. This way he manages to breathe better and even calms down. Later she goes with him to the infirmary and still asks if he was already feeling better. The guy said yes and apologizes for the trouble. She understands that what is happening at school this week is going to be very hard to deal with, and still tells him to go home and rest. That is easy. The guy stays more at home than at school. The teacher leaves the room very worried about him, and the big guy keeps sitting on the bed. At that moment, Yumeno calls the teacher and asks if Rintaro was in the infirmary. She said yes, but tells the girl to leave him there resting, and ends up pushing the girl back to the classroom, saying she needs to get back to her studies. The poor little girl stays there all worried about Rintaro. After school, later at night, he kept wandering the streets aimlessly. He wanted to check if that alley was still dirty, especially because she caused a huge mess in that place. He slowly heads to the place. When he gets there, he is surprised. It was all extremely clean, without any trace of blood, and he even looks in every corner. He runs his hand on the wall to see if it was still damp, but there was no trace of dirt, and it also hadn't rained to wash the blood away. The ground was dry and there was no sign that anyone had been there to clean everything, and he even wondered what had happened for the place to be like that. And this only reinforced his idea that he was going crazy. At that moment, Yumeno appears, asking if he came to this place to meet her again. This was the first time someone could remember her, and the girl thinks that is interesting. What do you mean? Of course I remember you. You study with me. But that was not what she was talking about, guys. The girl asks if he remembered what she had done yesterday, and even comments if by chance he noticed that people's memory was abnormal. He had spoken with the teacher and she said that the janitor had died in a car accident. Then the boy asked Yumeno what she did and if that was real. And smiling, she said yes. In a kind of crazy way, she said with all the words that yesterday she had killed the janitor in that alley. But it was strange because no one remembered. And he even keeps telling her that this is impossible. The girl slowly approaches him and said that this is what she is. She eliminates people and they do not remember her. The guy tries to back away and she touches his belly, saying that he is the first one to remember. Even the people who are at the crime scene do not remember the next day. The big guy gets really angry and realizes that he was not going crazy, but that she had a bizarre power. Could it be that she has a power like mine? She literally could eliminate anyone and no one would know. It was strange because no one had remembered her things until now. He was the only one to remember. The girl even asks if by any chance Rintaro is like her. He had the power to see people's death, which would happen in the future, or see the death of someone near him in real time, but he could not interfere with destiny. No matter what happened, it always came true. But Yumeno's power was different, because she changed things. Smiling, she told him to stay calm and forget about it. She was surprised that he remembered, but that didn't change anything. And she also said that he must take care of her, because the classmates would think he was a bad person if he mistreated the girl. Rintaro asks if by any chance she would also kill him, but she said no. Even I would be dying of fear of this girl, better stay away. He was a good person and she only did this to bad people. I don't know about you, but I don't trust her much, especially because our hero was also a little suspicious. Her personality was very different, and even her eye color changed. And even if the voice was the same, he felt it was another person who was there. It was not the Yumeno he knew from school, so he asks who this girl was. Then Yumeno gives a laugh, scaring him, and she keeps laughing in a kind of cute and at the same time weird way, saying he understands nothing. She was Yumeno Sakuraku, but she was not the Yumeno he knew, because that heart belonged to another person. The guy wonders if she has a split personality, and that was exactly what was happening. It was as if there were two people in one. He had already read about this in other places, and it was what happened with a child after trauma. Sometimes when suffering something traumatic in childhood, the memories separated, and then another personality appeared. Maybe that was what happened to Yumeno, he keeps thinking. The girl reveals that at night this other personality shows up. It was like there was a night Yumeno and a day Yumeno. Thinking of that happy and smiling girl, He imagines she must have suffered a very big trauma for this to happen. Then she asks if he would like to know more about her. Part of him wanted to know, he was curious, but another part was scared to death. But Rintaro said yes, so she was going to tell the whole story, and already starts revealing a bomb, saying her mother had died when she was little. The guy asks if by any chance her mother didn't disappear, and she said that only the day Yumeno thinks that. In fact, something much worse had happened. Her mother had her life taken away right in front of her eyes. Since she witnessed all of it, she ended up traumatized. The police investigation revealed that the person who did it had an old relationship with her mother. And with a sad look, she asks Rintaro what he thinks happened to that person. Our hero already imagines that the criminal was probably arrested, and she said yes, that's what happened. But he was still alive even after having killed her mother. She had said yesterday that it was not fair for a person to kill an innocent and live long enough to pay for his sin. This injustice did not punish the criminal properly, so it was for her mother that she made this justice with her own hands. Rintaro would not be able to understand this kind of thing. Since her mother had gone, she could not accept that guy was still alive. That's why she promised she would make sure to kill him when she had the chance. Only then would she feel better. That's why when the sun sets, this other personality appears and she starts hunting bad people. With a smile, she asks if he was surprised. No man. No, it's fine, I'm good. Of course not, right girl? Now that she told the whole truth, he needed to think a little. He doesn't even say anything, just stays there thinking. The girl reveals that he could very well hate her, but asks him to treat the school Yumeno well because she had nothing to do with it. She didn't even know. And so she starts leaving. He tries to stop her, telling her to come back because he had more questions. But this was a goodbye, and he would probably never see this personality of hers again. The guy keeps asking her to come back so much that I think he is falling in love with this crazy girl. But at night he was in the bathtub thinking. He wanted to think he was wrong, but it seemed he started to convince himself that Yumeno was right. If bad people were eliminated, innocent people would be saved. But only the night Yumeno knew these things. He keeps thinking that when he meets the girl, what kind of face should he make? And even if they were bad people she had eliminated, still she had done something criminal. But at the same time it was hard to judge someone who does things through another personality. I know guys, this is a really complex story. It's that Death Note talk, that you think it's fair or not. Kira keeps eliminating criminals. With that innocent little face of Yumeno, he knew she had no fault at all. And while drying his hair, he said he only believes her because he also has these strange powers. He even thinks it would be much better if he didn't know anything. The scene changes to the next day at school. In the teacher's room, he was talking with that blonde. The teacher asks if he was better today, and the guy said yes and apologized for making her worried. She asks him not to push himself too much, and if he feels unwell to go back to the infirmary. He agrees and leaves. The guy was walking tense through the hallway until he reached his classroom. He was worried about what his classmates would say because of what happened yesterday. He remembered everyone drawing attention to him, because he was shouting at Yumeno. Maybe everyone was slandering him inside the classroom. But anyway, he decides to face it and opens the door. Upon arriving, Yumeno looks at him. She notices that he had entered, so she immediately runs off worried. The guy notices that she was shouting his name loudly inside the classroom. And while going in his direction, she asks if by any chance he was feeling better. She learned from the teacher that he had felt unwell and left early yesterday. At that moment, he realizes that this girl really had a split personality. Nighttime Yumeno said that daytime Yumeno knew nothing, so he decides to believe this story, because it would be better for both of them. He apologizes for what happened yesterday, drawing the girl's attention. He was regretful for having shouted at her. Giving a slightly shy smile, she said she didn't mind, because he had been sad yesterday. At that moment, his classmates approach and call him by name, saying that they were wrong yesterday. Our guy doesn't understand anything. They thought Rintaro was blaming Yumeno for Shuka's death in the classroom. That's why they apologized. Another girl also appears, saying that Yumeno had told everything. She said that Rintaro and Shusuke were childhood friends, and that's why he was so upset. He realized that Yumeno was doing everything to clear his name, and the girl stayed there saying that our hero only shouted at her because he was sad. Everyone was shaken by what had happened this week and apologized for having drawn his attention, since he was just venting. The blonde even says that if Rintaro was going through something, he could count on them, and Yumeno gets emotional, because the boy was making new friendships. Moreover, if he got sad, the class president would also be worried wherever she was. Thinking about that, he gets emotional, and everyone there tries to befriend the boy. All thanks to Yumeno, who didn't give up on Rintaro. The class president had always been concerned about him, and ended up leaving this legacy for his new friends. Later, they were taking the trash to the collection point. The teacher had asked the two of them to do this, and the guy keeps calling Yumeno to go together after class. She agrees, making a kitty face, and so they go to the recycling area. She explains to Yumeno that she should throw the glass in this other place. She agrees and goes there. However, there was a broken piece of glass sticking out of the trash bag, and it was a very sharp tip. The girl ends up throwing it without him noticing. At that moment, he notices a drop of blood falling on the floor and gets scared. He realizes that she had cut her arm and had some bandages wrapped around it. Yeah guys, what could she have been doing for her arm to be bandaged? This work is full of mysteries, and is getting really good. If you want me to bring a continuation, leave a comment. The more comments you leave, the more YouTube recommends our video to more people. I will recommend 2 works that I'm sure you will like, so we'll see each other there. Other than that, that's it. Thanks and see you later, everyone.